All right, so this is our first guest.
Yeah,
All
I'm happy to be
right,
here.
Valentin,
Yeah.
please introduce yourself.
Wow, such a complicated task.
I know.
So hello everyone. My name is Valentin. I'm a French concept artist. That's it.
So, Valentin, I first knew you from Instagram, and you're doing daily studies, and I know that you started a YouTube channel that um,
hmm
talks about daily studies. So, yeah, would you like to start there?
That's kind of strange, to start from the beginning and talk about how did we meet because
Mm,
we kind of chat maybe every week. That's kind of you know
yeah, yeah.
classic introduction. That's funny.
Well, discipline was like a big thing
Mm,
for your channel, I know.
yeah,
And yeah, like let's start from there. Let's
because it is a huge part. Like we've got a lot of things to talk about that. So back from the beginning, when I was in art school in France, because I've made a concept art school in France, in the west of France, in Nantes. Um, so I had 2 years, like 2 academic years, just with oil painting, acrylic, gouache, and life model drawing, stuff like that. And it was really good because when I was younger, um, because in high school there is only a few people who are drawing, and you're like, oh my god, like I'm so strong, I'm so good at drawing. And so when I entered this art school, I was like, dude, I don't know nothing. Maybe it took 1 or 2 weeks to get rid of that. How can I say that?
you're not special feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And
I felt that too.
you thought you were kind of super strong or something like that, but no, like you don't know nothing. And that is really good to go through that because it helps you to get better. So that's good. But it took me some time
Yeah.
to understand that. But once you understand that, and once you understand that you don't know a single thing in painting, in volume, in value, in everything, I think that's when the journey begins. So
Yeah,
that was really
for
cool.
sure. Yeah, I think so too. And I think for me as well, like I was also that art kid back in high school, and then when I got here, we started with like perspective trainings, and
Mm.
that's when the time like everybody was like, yeah, we don't know shit. It's also transferring from well, not transferring, but for me is like introducing myself to transportation design. It's like before in entertainment, I was like, yeah, I got this. I have all the color theories. I like get all of that basic stuff down. Then when I go to car design, I was like, what the fuck? Yeah, it was definitely a struggle. And I think like whenever you're introduced to a new thing from a new perspective is definitely where
Mm.
you start to improve the most.
In my school, I think that few things were really missing because, okay, so just to make a quick, just to talk a bit about design, like I didn't learn what was design until I finished the school and I worked on my portfolio. I didn't knew really what was that before, because for us, design was just, as some teachers told us, it was to make a cool thing, make a really good illustration, but that was not concept art, that was not design. And that was the
Yeah.
main problem with that school, I think. Like, we had 1 or 2 teachers talking about that, about the importance of substance and not the form, but that wasn't enough, I think, because mm, not a lot of teachers were training us for the real world. We were still in this
Yeah.
phase of. I was discussing with a young student, because I've got like we're gonna talk about that later, but I've got a Patreon page, and on the Discord server, I've started to make a feedback session. So one Saturday per month we meet, and I'm just making feedback on paint others. And so I've discussed with this French student, and she really wants, she's making character design. But she's making character design and she's gonna finish the school in 1 year. So in 1 year, in theory, she's gonna have to find a job. And so this character design, like, it's not to be mean with her because we already talked about that, but it doesn't tell that much thing. So the substance isn't that worked. And also, like, the form isn't that good, proportions problem, volume problem, values problem. And the most important thing is the design, like, there is not that much interesting elements in there because I do think it is due to the lack of substance. Because it doesn't have a lot of things to tell, then the design, like, the design will not be, that much interesting. And that's what I really discovered when I started my portfolio after the school. Because during the school, it was only form, only just illustration, and that was also super bad. So both substance and form super bad. And I really learned that after school.
Yeah, honestly. And I think in school, there's a lot of emphasis. Well, not even just school. I mean, I think even in the industry, a lot of the times when you see like an artist out there that just do these extremely intricate illustrations,
Yeah.
but when you look at the design itself, sometimes it's not as interesting, or sometimes a bad design can be disguised by a beautifully rendered technique, and there's nothing wrong with having a solid technique.
Of course not.
But I think the content underneath the technique is also really important, and that that's like separately, like, partly for what you deem as an interesting design by itself, and then another side is when you're working in the industry, you're creating something that has a purpose to fulfill something. Sometimes these things might not be visually pleasing, or like it might not fit what like your standard is for a beautiful design, for like a beautiful design, subjectively, but like maybe it serves a certain function in the game or in somewhere else, like in a product or something like that. And I think a lot of the times these things are overlooked because they're not deemed as like a pretty design or like a technically advanced design. Like you see someone that has maybe not as a good technical skill, but their design is good, and then sometimes that get overlooked as well. So yeah, I do agree with you.
When it's like for from softwares for video game. So I'm going to talk about it as with the Western point of view, right? Because I don't know exactly how do they work. I don't know how do they feel inside the studios. But Elden Ring, for example, or Dark Souls, like, the video game is, in my opinion, it doesn't look that good. You don't have this 4K textures. You don't have all of that. So when you look closely, it's it's really ugly. But the design, that there is something deeper. That there is. I'm not talking about the story. I'm not talking about the lore of Elden Ring or Dark Souls. I'm really talking about what's under all of that. You don't create a world like that with nothing to talk about. And
Yeah.
I still don't know what does that talk about. Maybe religion, maybe, I don't know. And so, and honestly, that is super interesting to sense that you don't got what does that talk about. That's
Mm.
how. That's why. Yeah. That's why I really like those video games in this studio. It is because you sense that there is something deeper, and the design, they are incredible because we don't really get what's behind that, but you
Mm.
sense definitely that there is something, and that they choose everything to reinforce what do they want it to tell, and
Yes.
that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah, for sure. I think for these kind of designs, I sadly I still haven't got the chance to play Elden Ring, which I really really want to, but my my computer won't stand it. Um,
Oh,
but
you're sure? Because it is not as like it's a pretty cool video game. I mean, doesn't need
it's
that
like
much
a
capacity.
maybe because I'm on a Mac, so most of the time like it just doesn't go with MacBook.
Okay.
And yeah, but I'll see. I'll see. Maybe I'll try it out. And yeah,
Yeah.
when you see these weird designs, I think I see it in a lot of the older animations or older creations of whatever, like old films, like old horror films. There's a animation that I really like by Mobius and the guy.
Okay.
Actually, I think it's by Mobius, and um, it's called Fantastic Planet. Um, do you know that film? It's
Uh-huh.
like
I
it's like
know
an
that they
animation about
go.
a bunch of blue people.
I know that
It's
they
kind of
made.
like Avatar. Yeah.
Do you think that's Fantastic Planet, or maybe like the French name is La Planète Sauvage? It is with
Probably.
blue aliens who chase humans.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
That one.
Like
Yeah,
this
that one
this
is my
movie,
all-time favorite.
it is
It's
fantastic.
so
It is
cool.
fantastic. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And it's like the design in there is kind of a little bit of what the fuck is that?
yeah.
Um, but
Uh,
it leaves
yeah.
so much, right? It
I
leaves so
don't
much
know what is that,
ambiguity.
but for example, at
Yeah.
the end, when there is like the reproduction part,
Uh-huh.
when in order to for the alien to reproduce themselves,
Yeah, they
they're
do weird
kind
yogas.
yeah, like they project themselves on another planet, and they kind of interpret
Yeah,
giants who are blue and red, and they are dancing in another planet. You don't remember that?
very vague. Very
That was
vaguely. I
awesome,
need
but
to watch that again.
the movie is completely. It is awesome, but I'm not sure that was Moebius who worked on that. I'm not sure at all.
I think
We'll need to
I think it
check.
is. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
And I
we'll see.
think it was Mobius and Miyazaki later on in the Nausicaa of the Wind
Yeah,
Valley took I think they took some inspirations from that film as well.
yeah,
And
definitely. It is awesome.
yeah, and for me my favorite part in there is like the zoology is like the food chain of that planet is it's quite interesting. It's like the
Mm.
one where I think someone got kidnapped and then you see the scope of the world.
Yeah,
There's this
and
like an eagle like creature and it got eaten by this plant and it got eaten by something else. It's pretty great. I love this kind of stuff.
yeah, it was really. I mean, it doesn't really match with the actual standards in terms of design,
Yeah.
but it was really interesting to just look at you know people doing their stuff. They just wanted
Yeah.
to make something. They did it, and that was awesome. That was cool.
And
I
honestly,
don't know
I
if
think
that was conventional for the time, or if it was already kind of
I
ruled.
actually don't know either. Yeah. Because I imagine at the time, um, Mobius and a bunch of other French animators and I mean it was created in what 1987 maybe was it? I don't know. I did like a whole paper on this and I Forgot what.
Okay.
Well, but at the time it was like Mobius is doing a bunch of animation and it's influencing a lot of the Japanese animators, and like I think over that time it was just the golden time of, I guess, weird animation. Yeah, but look, I think what's so interesting about these things is it kind of relates to a little bit about what I was talking about in the first episode of my podcast. That, wait, actually not. Sorry, it's an Instagram post that I said about AI. I think imperfection in these things are so important because I don't know if it's intentional or not, but I think these imperfections or whatever, these things that doesn't make sense right away kind of leaves it space for people to further interpret and give their own thoughts and just kind of wander off into their version of imagination and things like that. So that's why I think like these things are so beautiful, because it's like it leaves a lot of room for the audience to do the design work for themselves.
I was watching Alien with my mother because she's never see it, and so we were watching the movie, and so the one from I guess it's 79 Alien. So we were watching it, and I was like, dude, when this film came out, I would have loved, to live that moment, because now we've got Alien 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
Prometheus, Alien Covenant, and now a new movie, which is Alien. I don't know, like
I don't even know.
I don't really remember the name. But what was amazing with the first Aliens is that, so first of all, you discover, when they go on the planet. Have you watched it, by the way? Yes. No?
It's been a while, but
Okay. Maybe you remember, but when they go in the first planet, so they see an alien spaceship. You are like, oh, okay, so we see another life spaceship. And then, so they enter the spaceship, they see a huge human or a huge life being, and there is already, the chest buster, the famous thing from Alien, like the alien is growing inside you and it's going out from the chest. And so you see a giant alien, like a giant humanoid form with already the chest buster, and then the characters move into the spaceship, and you already understand that maybe the alien that we are gonna see after is not from the same species as the humanoids who are in the spaceship, And so you already understand that there is two new form of life in 15 minutes, and you don't know where they are coming from. Like you really think, and you are afraid like the humans, because you don't know think about everything. Like you discover the story and you discover the world with them. And the film was amazing without knowing everything about the rest, And with the other movies, they tried to explain stuff, and that was super bad, like Prometheus and Alien Covenant. Of course, there is some stuff good in it, but that's fucking bad, I don't get the point, They just
it's more and more. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more and more nowadays you see like people spoon feed information to audience and just I don't know why that happens actually. I wonder why. I had a similar conversation with some of my friends recently about how kind of entertainment media is evolving these days. And part of it, I get it, is like you gotta make that money right away. You have the pressure of making back the money that you spend on this huge $1 million budget movies. But with that many advanced technologies, and it's just everything, it's like everything is done for you. You don't need to do any thinking, and you just sit there and consume. I don't know where this come from, and I don't know why people think that this would work.
I mean, I'm not into it. I don't know how does that work exactly. I might have some ideas, concerning money, of course, but um, I do like when I don't understand a thing because it is for me the same as it is really natural in the way that it looks like us in the universe. You don't
Mm,
know where's behind that. You don't know what's the limit. You don't know when it's gonna end. We don't
yeah.
know a single shit about where are we, and we will probably never know that. We understand it some stuff, but that's it. And I do think that when you have that in a movie or in a video game, when you don't have all the information, that is always better. That is always better.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's more things for you to imagine and do your own thinking to explore. Yeah.
Hmm. Exactly. When you give the final answer,
Mm. Yeah,
people
it's
are,
like it becomes boring
yeah,
when you
because
have everything. For example, in my opinion, I just watched, well, not just watched, but I watched Avatar 2 when it came out.
that sucks. That is a fucking bad movie. That's it. That's it. No discussion. No discussion. That film really sucks. And you want to make
Bruh!
precaution for that? No, no, no. You want to make
Bruh!
precaution. That
God
film,
dang!
that movie is a fucking 10 on 10. 2 of 10. Like, this movie is fucking bad. That's it.
I do want to give credits on their exploration on technology in terms of CGI.
Mhm.
Because I think in the first movie, it was like it came out like a wave, it also was the most advanced in terms of CGI movie. And this one kind of took the legacy of that one and explored on. I feel like they put all of their budget on exploring the advancement of CGI in terms instead of putting any focus on the story.
I mean,
That's how I
with the
feel.
water, yeah.
The first world building, I think it was much better. It was much more cohesive, where the second one, it kind of feels a little bit moved from um, like what we have on Earth and then just kind of like copied over to the side. And it's done a little bit like things feels a little bit decorative, in my opinion. But that's not the focus here. What I'm trying to say is with such an advancement in CGI, right? And so much art that are done um to the tiniest details, everything is explained to you. Like everything is well rendered. It's like you see these things, they're almost like they actually exist in real life. They look like they actually exist in real life in terms of technologies and how they recreated that. But when you look at the things underneath and the story that they're talking about, and it's such a big jump from the comparison between how good their CGI is and how little they cared about what's actually beneath the thing.
Like, the world building is excellent for the first one. And it is awesome to see how easy, like, how simple it can be to create such a unique world. Because Avatar is
Yeah.
just everything that is kind of strange on Earth. You size them by two, you kind of push the saturation, and that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, just for the flora, okay, not the animals, but for the flora, that's it.
I mean, they all
And
kind of have the blue theme as well. One of the things that I love the most about how much thought that was put into the first Avatar. So all of the animals in Avatar's world has 6 limbs.
mhm.
Um, and but the Navi people has 4. And revolutionarily speaking, it doesn't make sense because why do people have four and the other? I mean, aesthetically, yes, it makes sense because they want to make creatures that are more familiar to humans and not too alien looking for consumers as human beings. Um, but they put in this design that is so just beautifully done in the film where it's the monkeys that they see in the
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
part of the movie. It only like existed for like 1 second, but the design of that monkey, the upper limb of the monkey is
Mhm.
fused, and so they use that 1 second to explain that maybe the four limbs on the Navi people came from the arms fusing together as into one. And so it's just these kinds of like little attention to
Mhm.
details. It gives so much soul into a world building.
That's
Yeah,
the same
and
for
it's
Dark Souls and From Software's video game. Like you discover a tiny detail, and you're like, maybe they just put that because it's cool. But no, like
Mhm.
everything is
But you see
justified.
that yeah, it's like it's there because of this
Yeah.
reason, and it's like all related to everything else around the world. And I think that's the kind of successful world building that is becoming more and more rare in today's media. I don't know.
You mean
Maybe I
Avatar is
don't
the best
consume
world
enough.
building, or this kind of way of thinking or creating world building is the best?
Yeah, I think this kind of
Yeah,
way of thinking and creating the world is
because
really
Talking
valuable.
about the number two.
this is super bad. Like
Yes.
just just the story itself. Okay, we're
Mm.
not gonna talk about it because it is obvious that it is super bad. Like just they got the same bad guy, and the reason why there is still the same bad guy is so stupid. We've got a memory CPU and like, dude,
Actually,
no.
you know what?
Um,
Instead of talking about like how bad it is, because I think it's a
mhm.
it's known. I'm curious what led a product to this point because at budget wise, I don't think they have a problem with creating an actual good script. At least like something that makes sense, something that maybe I can't say fully on how good the script or how bad the script is because I just didn't finish the film. I walked out of the theater. But what I'm saying is, I think these films they don't lack budget. Like it's not a budget problem to create this type of things. And what I'm interested in is what is the environment that encouraged this type of things to exist? It's like everything is so flashy. It's a fucking 3 hour film. And people sit in there, they see the 3 hour film. I mean, for us artists, we can see through what's happening, like it's the art stuff is kind of almost like it goes past us. And sometimes we can be a little bit critical like overly critical about like something is beautiful or not. But it seems to me that in today's age that people don't even care about what story is being told anymore. They don't hold the people that writes the story accountable anymore. It's like if something is badly written, they'll just be like, "Oh, the visual looks cool, and that was a cool movie, right?" It's like I don't know. It like with the interesting films that we talked about that has like great stories. For example, like Miyazaki's stories, everything is so harmonious together to where we are now where the technology is far more advanced but the content within it is kind of gone and people seem have less care about it. I'm not talking about like designers. I'm talking about the actual consumers who receive this type of content and you know because
That's why
it
I'm
did
going
well.
to. That's why I've decided to go back to older movies.
Mhm.
I was discussing with Daniel Red, Papa.png, and because I often ask for him for movies. Like back in the past, he always gave me, all the movies, and I was like, okay, but don't you have do you have actual movies? And he was like, man, I don't watch any actual movie. I'm still stuck in the past. And I discovered because I didn't knew anything about all the movies. Fritz Lang's movies, Kurosawa's movies. I didn't watch anything like that. Even Hitchcock, I didn't watch anything about from Hitchcock. I was like, okay, because at that time, so it was a few years ago, I was just watching Marvel stuff, like huge blockbusters, and that was okay for me. And then I've discovered Metropolis. It was from not Megalopolis from Coppola, but Metropolis, right?
The very very beginning one or the anime one?
Oh no, the beginning one, 27.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
And I was like, dude, first of all, the visual effects of that movie in that age, wow, like honestly, it was super inventive because they
Yeah.
didn't have that much, they didn't have, of course, all the softwares that we got now. But
Yeah.
it was super inventive to create visual effect. For example, there is a scene when there is the character is facing an explosion. So it is not as simple as we film the explosion, we film the character. Because so first of all, you film the character who is static. Then you film the explosion, then you go back to the character, and when there is the explosion, the camera is in movement, like the camera is rotating like that, and the character, like when the camera is going like that, the character is jumping down, and so you kind of sense with the movements of both the camera and the character, you kind of sense the explosion itself, without 3D, without stuff like that. And that was so inventive. And so then I've discovered Nosferatu from 1921.
Yeah.
That was awesome too. Like all those movies, they are fucking incredible. And then I discovered
the visuals,
Kurosawa.
the graphic breakdown of those films are just
it is so impressive.
It's very modern, I would say.
Yeah,
it's like exactly. Right, and maybe it's because all the films are referencing back to those films, but it's
definitely
when you look at those, it's kind of it's still modern. It's still graphic wise, it still stands to today's aesthetic standards. Yeah.
That was awesome. And really watching those movies, I was like, dude, I'm wasting my time just watching, Iron Man or Avengers.
It's another give credit time. I'm not against Marvel movies or movies that are just there for entertainment, because I think for artists and designers, where our standard is artist. Art still exists. Artists still exist. Yeah, for people like us, I think we have it's aesthetic wise, we have so much this needs to be this way, or whatever we deem to be beautiful. But a lot of the times these things, for just regular consumers, I think they're a good source of just entertainment to, when you're off a day of work, you just want to watch some Marvel movies. Maybe it's not the best thing out there, but it's cool to watch, and I appreciate that. I think these type of things needs to be there as well to balance the whole market, I would say, because it's I don't know about you, but I can't listen to way too artsy music for a very long time. I gotta listen to some pop music to just
I really hate
dirt
that.
up my closet. I don't mind that. It's just like I gotta switch gears sometimes, just for me. And so like that's why I appreciate the existence of Marvel movies, even though I don't like them at all. But I think on just from the standpoint of an average consumer base, I think it's fine. And I think it's something there to entertain people. But I have my I have my problem with it where it's like these type of content because it's consumed by everybody and it's such a big budget too. It's like big budget for a majority of consumers. The message in there is it's kind of you know, and yeah, so I
Yeah.
don't know how healthy. Maybe it's just like junk food, you know,
What I'm
for
saying that is shit. What I'm saying that is super bad. Of course, it is my own point of view because no one is omniscient. No one is right, no one is wrong. But I just like to say that is shit because I do think that extreme point of views can bring to a more balanced point of view or a more nuanced point of view. Um, and personally, I do think that we already consume too many fast food. I mean, intellectual fast food. Um, we are listening fucking bad music while watching fucking bad movies. Like there is so much interesting, and people are gonna probably say, yeah, but that's just your point of view. I do like pop music. I do like Marvels, and that's good. Like, no problem. Like, just do whatever you want. I just think that is fucking bad. Okay, and I do want because me too. I was listening to more conventional music. I was watching a lot of Marvel stuff, a lot of Disney movies. But it's just that now there is so much, so much more interesting stuff to watch. I do think that Arakiri from Kurosawa is much more better than Iron Man. I don't
yeah.
get the point about watching all the Marvels when you can watch all the Kurosawa's movies. That is awesome. That is mind blowing to watch those movies.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I don't really care if people, if they prefer that. That's fine. Just watch this. Do whatever you want, but I don't like it.
Mm.
I do think that you waste your time by watching that.
I think I appreciate the existence of these things because they provide people's basic needs. Can I say that? Because it's like I don't. First of all, I don't like them. It's been a while since I watched a Marvel movie and I liked it. Um, and I don't know. In my opinion, it's like becoming more and more generic. But the existence of itself, it provided jobs for people. It provided like a basic type of just base consume base consumerism for people that are watching these type of movies. And I I think I think these type of things needs to exist in order for a better type of film to exist. For example,
Yeah, of
the
course,
ones you mentioned, right?
because it makes
It's like
money.
yeah, and it's like I want to compare this to a product, but at the same time, it's like you can make a good movie with low budget.
Of course, yeah. Like
Um,
one of the movie who generated the most money. It was a fan film. Like it was a teenage movie, like an horror movie. I can't remember the name, but it had only cost 10K or 20K, which is already a lot, but compared
but
to
compared to
actual,
anything, yeah,
yeah,
it's tiny.
the vehicles. And like the movie, I can't remember the name of the movie. It was like an horror movie, like with just a simple camera in a forest with three teenagers, one woman and two guys, and like they are in a strange forest with a witch, but you never see the witch. And they did other movies after that when you see the monster and stuff like that, and people just hated that. Because once again, people will fill the empty space with their imagination and with what's the best for them.
Yeah.
You know? And that was awesome. And the other episodes, that was super bad. That is always the same, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that. Yep.
Artist.
It is. Artist.
What's an artist?
I still do believe that exists.
Okay, so we don't. So you
I
do
stand my
consider
ground.
an artist.
Not myself. I want to be one.
Okay.
I think I work myself. Try to be more artist-like, but I don't consider myself to be one. At least not at this stage.
What is an artist?
I think artists is like they can not give a fuck about anything else to do solely what they want to do. And the reason why I don't consider myself an artist is I do give a fuck. You know, like part of what I do, I have to give a fuck to be able to eat. I think, but part of that, I feel like it can be also very well blended and very well balanced. I think Miyazaki is an artist, in my opinion, because I think a word that I would use to describe an artist is stubbornness. Is you believe in something and you just strive to do that thing no matter what is up against you. I say Miyazaki because I see that there's always this beautiful message in his films. It's a hot take. I'd like to do maybe a deep dive episode on Miyazaki himself, but in my opinion is like Miyazaki's film is not the highest production quality out there ever, you know? And from what I know about him speaking about his worldviews is that he believed the world is gonna burn down. I could be wrong, but I just heard that somewhere. But he still makes these films that are just that sends these beautiful messages. And I think that's the stubbornness that he has as an artist, is that no matter how much he believes that the world surrounding, and you can see that in his last film, is like everything is shutting down, everything is burning down, and everything is falling apart. But he still has that sense of hope, that sense of warmness in his films, and I think that's the type of stubbornness that an artist has for his films.
I really agree about that stubbornness concerning Miyazaki, but just going back to the word itself, artist. If Miyazaki said, I don't know what's his point of view concerning that, but let's admit that he says that he's not an artist at all. Would you consider him as an artist?
It's more like a philosophical question.
and
I think I will. I think I would. Yeah. Even if he doesn't.
He doesn't define himself like that. Why should we define him, as an artist? And it happens a lot. Right now, I've got the example of Jacques Brel. He's a French singer of 50s, 60s, 70s. I mean, he's from Belgium, but he's like Francophone singer, and there is a famous interview of him And in this interview, he says, I don't really know what means artist. I don't know art. I don't really care about that. I just think that there is people who are working on something. I just believe that there is people using their energy on something, you know. And even when you hear some like people like that, when you are watching also Whiplash, you know, all the time and effort, all the work that is required to achieve the masters, you know, we don't give a fuck about that word. Like, first of all, we don't give a fuck about that word. And secondly, I don't have plenty of examples, but for a lot of, you know, people who are at the top, they don't consider themselves as artists too. You know, they're just doing their stuff, you know. They don't really know what does that mean. And honestly, I don't know. Like, of course, there is a definition of it. An artist is someone, if I remember well, like an artist is someone who's making art, and art then has plenty definitions. But you know, there is 8 or 9 or maybe 10 now. I don't know type of different art. Like there is music, painting, film, dance, stuff like that. You know, and you're like, okay, so an artist is someone doing something in this area, but like it is not precise at all, you know, like someone doing something like you don't know. And so back in the past, when I was in this kind of art community, hey guy, what are you doing? I'm an artist. Dude, seriously, I don't know, what does that mean, you know, like you have to, can you precise please? And I kind of feel that saying that you are an artist is kind of, it's just my point of view, right? But it's a cheap way to create a poetic version of yourself, you know, for cheap, like for nothing, just with a word. You kind of let the people think that you are, you know, like that you are somewhere else, you know, like you are.
I see your point. Yeah.
Differently, you know. Yeah. That's the same for talent, like the word talent.
Oh yeah, I don't believe in the word talent.
Scientifically speaking, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Just it doesn't make any sense, talent, because what is talent? Oh, it is mystic stuff. Like you were born with something. For drawing,
and you're just magically good at it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no way. Like, exactly.
What is the gene for that? You know, like the gene will be probably to have a better perception of colors, maybe. And maybe not, by the way, because Daniel Red is, I don't remember the name, but you know, when you don't really see all the colors.
Colorblind?
Yeah, something like that. And so Daniel is like that. And you're like, oh, but his art is amazing. Like his paintings looks fantastic. Like, okay, maybe without that, it would not be as good as that. I don't know, but
I completely agree with you in terms of that. And I think I also agree with the word artist and talent are overused, and it can be a way to, like you said, like make it poetic for yourself. Maybe my point of view is that whether you're artist or not is not necessarily defined by yourself. And that's why I say, even if Miyazaki is not, even if he doesn't deem himself as an artist, but from my point of view, he is an artist. In my opinion. Only. In my opinion only. And maybe other people have their own opinions, and maybe he has his own opinions. So it's like something that someone, like a third party, gives to this person, kind of like a award type of thing. And It is very interesting, yes. I do agree with you. I feel like there is also a lot of nuance about how people define being an artist for themselves. I'm sure there are people who deem themselves like there are people out there who deem themselves as artists or actually are, but there are times that can be just a title for people to give themselves as a pat on the back for themselves, I guess.
It is like talent. It is often when I'm discussing with, for example, I've got a member of my family. Um, it was like 2 years ago. We were at a dinner. She was like, "Oh, you're so talented. Like, wow, you've got such talent." But first of all, she doesn't know a thing about what I'm doing, you know. So how
I
can
hate
you
hearing
know?
that as well.
How do you know that I'm talented if you don't know what is good or bad in this industry, you know, or in this world, you know? Because the more knowledge you've got, the more precise you can be. The more knowledge you've got, the more you understand about how hard it is to reach that level, or how much work you need to reach that level, you know? And for me, talent also is maybe not for everyone, but it is a way to compensate their lack of work in something. Because when you're telling you are talented and I am not, to me it's kind of, you know, a magic way to explain that you are better than them. But you know what? Like when you were probably at my age, maybe you went outside a lot, maybe you went to parties, maybe I don't know, you've made a lot of different, maybe you've spent 6 hours in a day on TikTok, you know, maybe not, you know, but all that time when you were doing something, I was drawing, I was working on my design um, capacities, you know, I was watching movies, I was listening to different music, and it's just that I'm not talented, or I'm not like Jesus didn't give me something else, you know, that other people. You know, of course, I was influenced by my parents or stuff like that, but I do believe that using the word talent is to feel your lack on something, maybe on discipline or work on something else. Um, so yeah, that's the reason
Interesting.
why I don't believe in that word. And it is often people who doesn't know about that thing who says that you are talented.
Yeah.
Like it is my parents who says that I'm talented. It is my parents who says that I'm an artist, and all my family members. But like no one is working on that, you know. Like for my grandmother, love you, grandma. But for my grandmother, when a friend asks her, "What is your grandson doing in life?" She's like, "He's making mangas, bro." Grandma, listen. No, no.
I also
But
appreciate that your grandma knows what mangas are.
yeah, exactly. But,
And she used the correct term.
but I'm like,
Props to her. To me,
so,
someone using the word talent, it almost feels like they diminish the amount of work you put into something
mhm,
to get to that stage. And it kind of makes me angry a little bit. Um,
yeah,
but yeah,
because it represents a lot of time and effort, right? It
yeah.
represents a lot of sacrifices, you know.
When we talk about like the word artists, we kind of have if we put all the stereotype stuff to an artist, it's like artists are not reliable. They're not on time. They're kind of like, all over the place or whatever. Though
Hmm.
it can be true. A lot of the times it's not. But those are things that are like the titles that are put onto artists that can be used as excuse. And so I wonder if you have now we talk about design and being a designer. I want to see your opinions on the word reliability. And I know that kind of ties to your daily practice and kind of what you do for jobs. And so
Okay.
I think that can also lead to our later conversation as well.
So first of all, because I've made a video concerning discipline on my YouTube channel, and it went from a video, like it was a podcast of Ash Thorpe discussing with Mache, and he was talking about reliability and about how unreliable people seems to be in this industry. I don't know if he was talking about other industries, but it was especially talking about that. And with Mache, they both agreed on that. And because they were talking about AI and how AI, in a way, is more reliable than a human being. And that sometimes, when you are working on a project, I got that kind of problem, with another project. I was working with a friend, and so we were working on that project. And of course, because we are not the same person, you put much more effort in the project than other people, And so, as Hashorp says, it was like, when you are working on your own project, it's like your own baby, and you really want to make it as perfect as you want it to be. And because it is your project, people are not often that interesting in your project, because they don't have the same link with with that, So I kind of felt that when you want to be as disciplined and as reliable as you want, but the other people, because they don't really care, they are not that much reliable. And once again, as he said, he doesn't think that they are malicious or bad people. He just thinks that it's life, like you can't control them. So reliable is a thing, and discipline is another thing. Because when I'm talking,
how do you define the difference?
Because reliability in something that you don't really like, it is complicated, and that's why you really need to be kind of disciplined. There is projects that you don't want to work on, that you find useless, kind of bad. But I mean, at least you have to. But once again, it will depend of people, because some of them will just say, okay, if I don't like something, I don't do it. If there is a job opportunity and I don't like it, I just don't do it. Why not? But sometimes you are facing obligation when you've got to buy some food, to pay your rent. You are confronted to needs, So you have to do that, and so you have to be disciplined. And when I was in art school, one of the biggest issue of being, it is the cat.
Yep.
Problem about getting better in drawing, in design. Like the best enemy of it is discipline.
Yeah. This is yep. This is the guy that makes all the noise. And yep.
Hi, buddy.
Yep. Sorry, please continue.
I know that I wasn't that much disciplined, and that was the biggest problem concerning the reason why I didn't progress that much, in my opinion. And when I understood that, when I knew that I really needed to work harder and to work twice, comparing to other friends, I knew that I had a lot of problem with discipline, and I really needed to work on it. Just for yourself, like if you really want to progress on something, I do think that you need a certain form of discipline, because motivation isn't enough. Because for me, motivation is, so it is both like you've got two things. You've got motivation, which is for me a short-term point of view, and you've got discipline, which is a long-term point of view. Because motivation is a pulsion, and a pulsion, by definition, isn't something stable. It is briefly something that you can't really control. But discipline, it is something that you have the control in it. And it is a daily effort that you do in order to achieve what are your goals. And that is something that I do think is really missing, especially in France, because I don't really know what's in other countries. But in France, art schools, like when you talk about discipline, when you talk about working hard, people are like, no, like, I'm making something else, I'm making my own stuff. But when they are confronted to the industry, to the reality, in my school, in my class especially, we were 30. There is 2 people who's got a long-term contract, and we are maybe 3, 4, 5 maximum making freelance. And so that is fucking ridiculous. We are only maybe 6 or 7 working on 30.
I think the reliability, it resonates with my definition of a standard for oneself, I guess, because for me, I mean, motivation is important. Because motivation is the thing that get you start on what you love or what you want to do in the first place. Whoa, dude. But a lot of the times, it's like you said, especially during a work environment, you don't have the choice to do everything that you love or you like, and there is the standard that has to be met in order to produce the quality that you're looking for. And so I think it's like the reliability that you're talking about is the standard that, for me, from my point of view, is like the standard I set for myself. Even if I don't like something, anything that come out of my hand has to meet this standard in order for it to exist.
When you start something, it came from a motivation, it came from a pulsion, but then in order to achieve what was your initial pulsion, you really have, and once again, as Daniel said, the industry is fucking saturated. They talked about it with Sacred in the podcast. The industry is fucking saturated because we are so many young people. And if you are not, like, basically, if you just want to have a job in it, you just have to do everything that people are not, like, everything that people don't want to do. So being disciplined, making daily studies. But when I'm talking about daily studies, it's not painting or sculpting or stuff. It's just like daily study. It's just an exercise of doing something every day, because it could be the everything that you want, like maybe every day you read 50 pages of a book, why not? Like that is good exercise. But everything that usually people don't want to do, you have to do it. Like waking up super early, going to bed super early too. Basically, being disciplined is something that people don't really want to do or don't really want to achieve, because it is not fun, honestly. Like it becomes fun with time. It becomes fun when you create something at the end. Like I've created a Discord server, and that's cool. I've met so many great people with daily studies because you're making something every day, kind of people follow you because of that, because they are kind of impressed of your discipline. And so when they say, oh man, I'm impressed by your discipline, you're like, oh, it kind of grants you so much more things than just daily pictures, or a daily practice. It grants you, I've met Daniel Red, I've met Jessica Taylor, I've made you. I've made so many great people just because of that, just because of discipline. It is a long-term point of view, once again. And if you really want to have a job in that industry, especially nowadays, with all the problems that we encounter with Hollywood problems, a few months ago, with the video game, which is a bit complicated nowadays. And you really have to do something that people don't want to do, and you really have to match, of course, the standards in a way, like in technically speaking, but also you have to really focus on the substance of things.
To be honest, I'm not the best at discipline myself. But I completely agree with what you say, and the idea behind it is like it's creating a mindset of doing something and meet at a certain standard, even if you don't have a passion or like you don't necessarily are the most excited to do it. I kind of walk around that. I work myself a lot around that type of thing. Is like when I see something that I don't like, I would try to find things that makes this thing appeal more interesting to me. So for me, it's like much more feeling based. So I wouldn't say I'm like the most disciplined person because of that. But I think just for anybody, it's important to have a standard. And I think that goes back to the film stuff that we're talking about a little bit, is like the standard for different things. Like for the standard for a script is so much lower than the standard of visuals, and sometimes the visual standard it's so high to the point of like unnecessary, but something else is left behind, and that like I think that is not a balanced standard, I would say.
It is kind of the same as finding a job, because I remember when I was starting, because I often see on LinkedIn, people kind of crying about the fact that they are not finding any jobs or any contracts. But yeah, of course it is hard, and it will become harder with time. But I saw a post on LinkedIn of a girl saying that, oh, today is the 100 cover letter I've sent it to companies without any response. That was like, yeah, like it is, of course, like it is kind of obvious. And I know how many time does that require, to contact companies. Because, so I've started in January, and I was contacted, I was contacting like 15 companies per day, and it only took me just the morning of every week. So from Monday to Friday, every mornings, I was just sending messages, sending cover letters, sending CVs on LinkedIn, emails, social medias. And so 100 companies, you just contact them in 1.5 weeks. Is that really good to complain after only 1.5 weeks? No, I don't think so. It is like painting, You don't become good at painting in just 2 weeks. It takes time. It takes a lot of effort. And once again, if you don't really match kind of the standards, technically speaking, then you're gonna be lost. I was discussing with an AD, and it was like, okay, so it is for a project I'm gonna work on, and he said, okay, so technically speaking, you are not as good as the other candidates, but your design and your ideas in your portfolio are much more interesting than them, because they are just doing common 3D stuff with assets that everyone is using. okay, the composition is good, but it is a plagiarism on of that composition. The design, there is no design, there is no story. And so at least if you don't match the technical aspect, you have to match the substance aspect, which is lacking a lot. Like when you're going on the art station, you just see cool stuff, but it doesn't tell anything. It is just clean, but clean isn't enough. Clean will not grant you a job. I mean, it is important to reach the cleanest version you can do is awesome, but substance is more important.
Yeah, I agree. It's I think you can see a lot of this in the Chinese market of entertainment. Is like there is a very big or very high requirement regarding technical skills, how well you can do something, how fast you can do something, how high percentage you can get something done in the shortest amount of time. A lot of the times it lacks content. In a way, it becomes this like vicious cycle that it's like people are chasing the technical skill, and the standard for technical skill goes higher and higher. And this you can see from school. Like by the time I entered art center, there are still people who have already been in the industry, and then they come to school and study. So it's like the age level is very different. And now I think most people that are entering art center are pretty much straight out of high school, and that's not even common before my I would say before my term. And the people that coming into art center right now is like they're already super good at 3D. They already know this much paintings, and they already took this much classes to elevate their technical skills. But and like once you enter the environment, it's like they encourage you to do even better, to do like even more details, to even more fidelity in your work. But the design behind it, the world building, the reason leading to the design, the storytelling, uh, the message behind the stories, that they're kind of just being overlooked, and they're not necessarily. I would even say that they're not being encouraged to have a good story anymore.
So I'm working with China, like for China video game. And basically, it is really bad. Like you can definitely sense that this video game is just to make money and not a good video game. What I mean by that is something with substance, once again, not form. And it is so I've sent sketches to have like feedbacks because I don't really know what they wanted. And because of the brief they sent it to me, they didn't know what they wanted to. And so the feedback was, can you add more abstract shapes in order to make it more design? Like
It's a lot of abstract words.
this sentence is amazing. Abstract shapes in order to make it more design. Dude, listen. That doesn't mean anything. Like, make it more design. Like, you don't really know what is design, right? It's just that design.
Yeah, what is design here?
Design is for me, of course it's for me, but design is a tool to reinforce what do you want to tell. Design is a tool to reinforce the substance. Design is the form which will explain or reinforce what do you want to tell through the project. That's it.
It's to achieve a purpose.
It is not cool stuff. No, man. It's not about that. It's about what do you want to tell. That's it. And
Unfortunately, a lot of the times there's nothing to tell.
yeah, but just don't do something, or just think about your life or your opinions on something. There is already a way to, because back in the past, so I've discovered that with a friend in my art school, because I was always making, I was trying to make cool pictures, and something which just looks really fun, but without any substance behind it. Um, I mean, there was always a story, but the story that didn't have anything to tell. It was just dark fantasy stuff. But yeah, it was really bad. Like the design were really bad, and I really understand that. I really understood that after my graduation project, which was a short film sci-fi project. It was really weird, but it was really cool because I had, like, this time provided me um, the time to explore and discover a lot of things, technically speaking. But I have failed a lot because I didn't have anything to tell, and because I didn't have anything to tell, the design didn't have anything to tell too, and it was just bad. And that's
Yeah,
the same.
I
When you see something that is beautiful on an art station, but it doesn't have anything to tell, that's kind of boring. That's always the same.
and I think that kind of relates to like an opinion on AI for me. I think I can agree with the idea that that's not necessarily everything has to have, great content. Not everything have to be like super good and super meaningful and super deep at all times. Um, but I do wonder, like even related to like projects that are just money oriented, like this thing exists to create money. I don't necessarily disagree completely with that. Like there are a lot of problems that goes within that system, but the existence of this thing itself, I think it's not that problematic. But I think what is problematic is now how much of these type of things are out there in these days is like almost like 80, 90, 95% of things are like this. They exist to be empty and just out there to make money, which is fine. Like people have to eat, like people have to have a job, but there's empty things, they're just empty, cool looking things. And also the existence of AI, it kind of adds on top of that, in my opinion. And it's like the introduction of AI is kind of feeding into this. It can multiply things by the thousands, by like, like you put in one thing into AI and it spit out like 10 different variations, and you can do 10 rounds on that. But it doesn't have any meaning. It's hollow by itself. But I also want to contradict myself with this sentence because I always liked this little clip by an interview with Bjork. She was the earliest ones to experiment with computer music. And there's this interview that she says you put in, like, there's souls in something because you put it in there, because someone put souls in that. And so I believe you can have something that is created with AI, but it has souls. But it's just like the environment these days, they don't encourage that. They don't encourage putting soul into something. And that kind of feeds into this just vicious cycle of how convenient AI is. And it's just like, it doesn't need a meaning to exist. It doesn't need a meaning to multiply by the thousands, by the millions. And that's what gets me the concerns is like, we have this amazing tool, but how fast is it going to push this stream of needless to have a actual meaning, an actual soul in something, you know?
I remembered a sentence from Yelgo, and I think that was because in France he had an exhibition a few years ago, but there were like drawings from Love, Death, and Robots and stuff like that, and there was a comic book, like 2 pages. It was awesome. Something that he has made a few years ago. And there is this sentence, and I believe that's coming from here, like under the comic book, which was, I have started to draw. I have learned how to draw because I wanted to tell something, not the other side.
Yeah.
And this sentence should be in the front of every art school. It is not about doing something. And I mean, when I was talking about the industry saturated, and Daniel is right, and Zacharias too, but it is saturated with what?
Exactly.
Because,
yeah.
Of course, there is a lot of people, and it is kind of boring because when you are applying to a job, there is 300 other candidates. But so I was discussing with it was during an interview for a job, and I was discussing with them, and I was like, okay, so I've applied to that, but how many candidates? It was only a 1 day or 2 day subscription. It was for really short contracts starting the other week, and so they only had left the open application for 2 days. They had 300 candidates for that job. And I asked them, okay, so how many are we to get interviewed? We were only 3. So 3 to get interviewed. And they said, man, like maybe 200 of the people replied. First of all, they don't have the skill. And secondly, this is not their field, like they are not really competent in that. And in the 100 left it, like 80 of them didn't have also the skill, to match the job. So of course the industry is saturated. There is a lot of young students, young concept artists or whatever, but they don't match the skills, They don't have the skills. They don't have the level of entering that because substance and because form, like the technique is bad, but they focus too much on that, and they should focus on something else.
It also happens in my school as well. I see a lot of, I don't know what's the percentage in this phenomenon exactly, but from what I've heard is that people are treating perspective or fundamentals less seriously than before. Because you have 3D, you can build a few boxes, and you have boxes in space.
Mm-hmm.
But without the fundamental understanding of that, there's like very limited things that you can do with, there's just limited knowledge that you have for something to appear in this space. Why does it look like that? Or like, why does this thing that's presented in front of our eyes make sense? Yeah, like you said, like the market is saturated, but saturated with a lot of the shortcuts, saturated with instant beautiful stuff, instant flashy shells that doesn't really have content within it. And I
It's
think
not
that,
saturated at all with substance stuff. It's
yeah,
only
I
saturated
agree.
with bad technique and good technique. But the most important thing is open, you know.
And I think that does relate to the education systems that we're in. I think
Yeah.
it's,
And with what we consume.
yeah, yeah, and what we
That's
consume,
why
exactly.
that's why I say pop music sucks. That's why I say pop movies sucks too, you know. Because if we all eat the same stuff, we will all produce the same shit, you know. It's just you have to go find like different references. And if you look at the references of your own references, it will always be so better, because you will notice that like Daniel is growing like no one before, you know, like in Instagram. Because when you look at his own references, like there is no Marvel movies in there, you know.
I think looking at reference is not just looking at reference, but like understanding how something is working. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I think it's so important to, I would say, study reference like instead of looking at reference, because I think looking at reference, it's more like you take this visual information. Yes.
It is the best example of how do you study a reference.
Hmm.
Um, there is a lot, like me included, there is a lot of people who try to replicate Giger style, you know, but they don't really know, for the majority of them, where is that coming from, you know, like how did he
Yeah.
create it, some
Exactly. Yeah.
incredible architecture, you know, like what was his references. And then when you read some pages, you understand that, okay, so he's influenced by Art Nouveau and all the mechanical industrial stuff that was around him. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, that makes more sense, you know. That
Yeah.
makes definitely more sense. And now I think that when you're gonna make something like Giger, or if you want to be influenced by him, you're gonna, okay, I'm not gonna look for Giger references. I'm gonna look for Art Nouveau mixed
Hmm.
with industrial stuff, and why not mixed too with, I don't know, like seashells structure or a fractal design, you know, like,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna create something much more interesting, you know, than if
Yeah.
it
It's
was
like
just
breaking down the reference and see
exactly,
the content
exactly,
within it, and then using it in a new form way of design. It's not necessarily just copying this to
yeah, exactly.
this. Yes, you can get an essence of it. Sometimes you can like be really good at copying something and
You will
transferring the
approach
information,
that,
but
but you will not reach that level, you know.
exactly, yeah, it'll just, at the end of the day, it'll come back to something looking extremely flashy and
Yeah.
cool, but there is not necessarily a deeper thing within it. Like sometimes if you say Marvel movies, sometimes you can have like a pretty interesting setting. Like I would still say like I like Doctor Strange.
I'm
Um
not saying that there is like everything is not bad, you know, like Iron Man
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
awesome.
I think what I'm trying to say is if you apply the concept that we just talked about
Mm, mm.
with breaking down something and knowing exactly what made or constructed this thing into the thing that you like or you like to reference. You break it down and you see what's beneath it and use that as the inspiration for your design or whatever. Once you have the mindset of breaking down or like get into the habit of breaking down the reference that you have and actually studying the reference, you will find that these things, these cool, flashy things, will only have like a very thin layer to break down. Like you can still break it down and like know what's in there, but like there is not much to dig like within itself. Like there's not much you can take out of that, even if applying um the same mindset of breaking down the reference.
Mm-mm.
And so I think that's why studying things that people actually put in time and effort into creating is so much more meaningful, because you can actually learn and go layers and layers deep within that um, reference.
I always take this example of Craig Mullins or Devin Collier. Like, those people, they've got fucking strong art knowledge. They are like art library, you know. And when I look at a Craig Mullins painting, I'm not looking at the painting of someone, you know. Like, I'm looking at a painting which has a lot of, you know, like, which has centuries of paintings in it.
I build into it.
And if you want to become, like, become, no, but if you want to kind of approach or touch or follow the direction of Craig Mullins, then it is just simply by making chaotic stuff or brush strokes who are visible or stuff like that. It is probably by following the same path as him. If you want to kind of embrace their skills, you really have to follow the same path, which is, in my opinion, knowledge, history of art, looking at, like, searching the references of your own references. One day I asked for Devin about his references, and so he sent me, like, he showed me his references, and I was like, man, I don't know, 1/4 of the painters that you are naming, you know. And all of that painters, they had something, and I was like, oh, okay, so Devin was influenced by this guy, and I know why. Like, visually, I understand, and I was like, oh, okay, like that was so interesting, you know. And you really have to make this work of research, you know. You really have to make that effort that no one want to do, you know.
Yeah, and that's the time required for you to build on top of that. Then it's not the topic of speed. It's like, yes, you can master copy Craig Mullins in a very short amount of time, but actually learning how he processes information and learning the knowledge that leads him to that point, it takes time by itself. That is a pretty good conclusion. And I think we touched a few quite interesting topics, like starting from talking about art. How do we define art, the word artists for each one of ourselves? And
Yeah, like more the word artist, because the word art, I didn't have really anything against that. I mean, I don't have any problem. It's just like the using of the word artist is kind of tricky for me. But
mm. And this is honestly the purpose of this podcast is, I think, I find it super interesting to see how different people can interpret a word or how they define something for themselves, and taken the path to further define or to follow their own definition of something.
yeah,
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is a really nice
thank you
first
for you.
episode.
It was really awesome for me to do that with you.
Yeah.
So it is the third podcast. Like, it is the first podcast I'm making.
Same here. Very first conversation ever. But yeah,
I
that
really
that
hope
was
that
really
we will
fun.
see. I really hope that we'll see a lot of really nice comments. I mean, in terms of, you know, if they want to push their point of view, it will be just, you know, nice to read you. So
Yeah,
if you
that
want
is
to
true.
conflict
Like,
something or just say that you disagree because of this or this, I will really love to read that.
Yeah, same. We want a little community, like it's a free space for everyone to kind of put their opinions
And even
out
if you
there
liked
as
Avatar,
well.
like you can say you
Please
like
say
it.
so, yeah. Anything that we talked about today, I would love to hear. I would love to read. And hopefully, with using this platform, we can reach out to more uh, interesting people out there and have these type of conversations. And yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you too, Jewel. It was super nice. I had really good time.